Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat here today covering Toonami's ratings from this past Saturday, September 4th, 2021. And let's start with the top of the block. At the top of the block, we have Fena, Pirate Princess at a .20, My Hero Academia at a .18, Yashahime at .12, Food Wars at a .11, Black Clover at a .11, Naruto Shippuden at a .11, Dr. Stone comes back at a .08, and Dragon Ball at a .07. Overall, this was a pretty mixed bag of the week. If you were looking for probably what the big prize of the week was and say, well, what did Fena do? Fena being probably the biggest bag of chips that the biggest pile of chips that Toonami has thrown into the center of the pile. It did pretty well at a .20. Now, Showbuzz Daily said it was like it went down to hundreds. I'm pretty sure it was .20 last week too. I could have been wrong on that. So again, I think it's a flat from week to week. And the start of the Fana on the block was kind of sketchy with .20, then it went down to like a .14, had a .16, and the last couple weeks have been a .20. And some might say, well, it looks like we've got a nice holding pattern of .20 for the show. Possibly. That's a very real possibility at this stage. However, I'm going to need more than like just 2 weeks in a row around this point for me to really confirm that. But from what I've seen, the general reception of the show has been pretty positive, so that's a good sign. And also, one thing that started this week that might play a factor in Toonami ratings for the next few months is that last Saturday was the start of college football season again, and that being on Saturdays. And usually, with ABC having like the marquee game of the night, if that game runs long, that cuts into Toonami's time, and that can really impact ratings. We've seen this before. However, this week was kind of a blessing for Toonami, considering that the marquee game of the night was a 7:30 kick instead of the usual 8 o'clock kick. So maybe that helped because usually college football games like 3.5 hours. Sometimes it goes as long as 4 hours, perhaps even longer if it goes to overtime. And if you have 4 hours from 7:30 is 11:30, so that ends before Toonami. However, if you have like a 4 hour game at a game that's really more like an 8:10 kickoff, that cuts into Toonami time. That's 12:10. And typically people might not tune in to Toonami after the game. And you get this sometimes. And this week we were saved because it was a particularly fast game. I mean, when the game's final score was 10-3, that's not many scoring plays, and the game usually runs pretty fast. And it's a game I liked. Well, first, it was a fun game, but mostly the fact that I am a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so I really liked the end result of that game. You know, but again, enough about football. Again, it's like just to sum up the part there. Toonami was saved by the fact that that the marquee game of the week was earlier than normal, and after that you have My Hero Academia. It said it went down to 100 to 0.18. I swear it went up from like 0.16 or so. I could be wrong again, but again, a 0.18. That's kind of been where My Hero Academia season 5 has been playing around with like upper teens, occasionally hitting the low 0.2s. So not much to say there, and it retains pretty well from Fan of Pirate Princess, only dropping 200s. And then here's where you have the problem. You have Yashahime dropping 300s to a .12. Now that's a full drop of a full third of your rating, full third of your 18 to 49 viewership block over the course of one show. That's pretty bad. And you look after that, you see Food Wars, oh, .11, Black Clover, .11, Naruto, zero point 0.1. Naruto got a .11. That's a very impressive rating, by the way. Right there, the fact that they're right next to each other, just behind what Yashahime did, implies that the issue with the night wasn't those shows, it was Yashahime itself. And Yashahime has been very, very hit or miss on the block. More or less, it's usually put up pretty bad ratings, except for those 2 weird weeks where they built on My Hero Academia, which right now look definitely more like the aberration. And then after that, thing is, you can't even say much about the shows after that because considering the fact that the show, the 1 o'clock show, only got a .12 this week, getting .11 is pretty decent. You know, Food Wars, I can't blame them for that number. Black Clover, can't blame them for that number. Naruto Shippuden, what happened this past episode because it went up. It was the only show that went up in its rating to .11, and for it being like 2:30 in the morning to get that high, something special has to have happened this day and age. And then you have Dr. Stone, Stone Wars Season 2 coming back to the block at 3 a.m. at a .08. I mean, we don't have any data points to compare it to, so maybe that's good, maybe that's bad. And then you have Dragon Ball Super at a .0 setting off the night. So again, if you look at the first two shows, the night looks great. If you look at everything after Yashahime, it looks pretty good too. It's just that Yashahime has just been a black hole right in the middle of the block. Right when you're trying to do that transfer from Fena, which you need to do well, My Hero Academia, which has done well and is clearly the biggest name on the block if you don't consider Black Dragon Ball Super, which is thrown at the back of the block. And then you have Yashahime just eating up the middle. Like I think the only obvious way I would change the schedule is to throw Yashahime to the 2:30 slot, shift Food Wars Black Clover and ship it in up one slot. That would be the best way to do it. And there it is. And I think we're still a ways away from the next new real full sale schedule change because I don't think any of these shows are that. I think Black Clover might be the closest to ending, and that's because that's because the anime in Japan was like, okay, 170, we're stopping right there, and we're gonna catch up to that sooner than later. And all these other shows, I think we still have quite a ways to go. So we're gonna have a rare bit of schedule stability, and typically, historically, that has helped ratings. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe Fena even builds higher on this. Maybe there's word of mouth on this. I actually haven't heard much in terms of word of mouth outside this typical like Toonami talk, and maybe occasionally the general anime community has heard Fena, but really, Fena hasn't really taken the world by storm. It's just done reasonably well for slotted given, and that's probably still outperforming expectations for me. And again, I think point two is kind of the threshold for it being like good or worthwhile investment with this day and age of advertising and this day and age of cable ratings. And it'll be interesting to see if it builds even higher because we're about halfway or so. We're near halfway through this first season, and stakes are just going to get larger and larger as the season goes on. Which definitely, if you watch the last episode of Fana, you know that the stakes are getting higher very quickly. But again, and I think I saw that like the ABC college football game of the night next week is like Washington, Michigan, two teams that are that good. So that's probably not going to put a dent in Nami's ratings. Like by comparison, the Georgia Clemson game, two top five teams playing each other got a rating of over a 2 on ABC, which for this day and age is pretty high. Unless you have a matchup like Alabama Clemson or Alabama Georgia. I distinctly remember like 2 years ago when Georgia played Alabama in the SEC title game, which unfortunately Alabama won, like they always do. The rating was like a 13, something insane like that. You know, fortunately, that was like a 3:30 kickoff. So fortunately, those numbers are never go up against Tommy because that would be a Death Star that would kill that night for the block. And yeah, enough about football. Toonami, ultimately, okay week. What do you guys think? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. I'm Super Orange Cat, and that is all.